back, guys, to the Realty Room, your go-to podcast for realtors. I'm your host, Miles Pointer, and I'm joined, as always, by my fantastic co-host, Marcus Butler.
What's up?
Today, we're going to get into current rates and some current news, and then we're going to dive straight into our thoughts on listing appointments. Marcus, first of all, how was your week?
It was good, man. Another busy week for the books. We got our studio done. For those of you who can actually see us right now and you're not just listening, hope you like it. We're not necessarily interior designers, but I think we did all right.
I think we did a good job.
We had fun. Made a couple messes, but yeah. How about yourself?
Yeah, it was good. The last few weeks have been kind of slow. Just got sick, and so this week was the first week that it feels like it was a full week back to normal. Mm-hmm. Things are slowly starting to pick back up to where they should be, but it was good. It's a good week.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Great. Well, today we want to start off with a little bit of rates for you guys. Conventional, 6.125. So they're steadily coming down. We got the Fed meeting coming up here in just a few days. So hopefully we'll see a nice little rate cut to boost all your guys' budgets there, and affordability, of course. FHA down at 5.25, which is smoking. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's lower than we've seen them pretty much all year. If you guys have buyers able to go FHA, that's an excellent option right now. And conventional is not too bad either.
Yeah. And things should look better, hopefully, at the end of this next week.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. Well, getting into some current news, I read an article this week from the Housing Wire. They were talking about Redfin. And so what Redfin did is they surveyed a bunch of their agents to get a feel for what buyer agent compensation looked like around the country. And what they found was that in sellers markets, or where sellers had all the power and a lot of demand, they were not offering near as attractive buyer agent compensation. But where there was a lot less demand and the buyers have the power, one area they used as an example was Austin, Texas. It sounds like there's a lot of not very much buyer demand, and a lot of sellers. And so sellers are trying to offer more attractive buyer agent compensation to get people to look at their houses. Yeah. So
until you brought that up today, I hadn't really thought about that. You know, in buyers markets and sellers markets, it'll probably just differ. You know, it almost seems like it's just an extension of price. It's just another tool to make a offer stronger or weaker. You know, so
I mean, there's just so many things that are happening that we maybe didn't see coming. And I mean, to write a more attractive offer as a buyer, you can write like less buyer agent compensation, and that looks better to a seller. Yep. Because at the end of the day, that's their bottom line going up.
Exactly.
So, yeah. Yep. Kind of interesting.
And again, it kind of is like an extension of price, you know, because it's coming out of the proceeds anyways. So taking $5,000 off the buyer agent compensation is darn near the same thing as just offering $5,000 more. Yeah. Technically, right? Yep. So
exactly.
Yeah, interesting. And these things are going to keep coming out. We're going to start figuring out these little nuances, just like we all knew was going to happen. But yeah, it's fun new tool for us to use.
All right, should we get into our thoughts on listing presentations?
Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's do it.
So kind of maybe we'll talk about some of our do's and don'ts and what you bring to a listing presentation.
I got one to start.
Okay, let's hear it.
I think the single-hand most important thing is bring energy and bring knowledge, right? When you knock on their door, first of all, don't show up late. I mean, that's obvious. That kind of goes without saying. But if you can, show up a little early. And when they open the door after you're knocking there, shake their hand with a big smile. Hey, how are you guys doing today? You know, just go in there with energy. And I think that is like the most important key, is to just start the meeting off on the right foot. Give them a great, first impression, honestly, is what it comes down to.
That goes along really well with my top point. My top point was build the relationship over everything. Because we're going to get into a little bit like what you bring in your listing package, and you know, you can get into all the details, but
these are just fundamental.
Yeah, relationship building is the most important thing. And real estate is completely a relationship game. And a relationship business.
Yes, it is. They'll work with you if they like you.
So like you said, coming with, you know, immediately presenting yourself with good energy, that's super important. One thing that I try to do in listing presentations is when I show up, like I'm coming to their house, and it's easy to put on your realtor hat and look at the house with kind of some skepticism, right? And you can look at all the little details that might stand out. But at the end of the day, this is their house. They love it. They've lived there for most likely for years. So I always like to get a tour of the house, even if it's a trailer. I want to get a tour of their house, and I want them to show me the details that they love. And usually it brings out details that you probably would never have learned about anyways. Or if you hadn't have asked. And then they get to, they're happy to show you around this place that they love.
And they tell you all the things they like about it. Too.
And they tell you the things they don't like about it. And you kind of see both sides. And but it proves to them, and like one thing that I try to do as well is when they're showing you around the house, ask questions. You know, if you see an interesting piece of art on the wall, ask them about it. Just the other day, I had a listing presentation, and she had, I think it's called a kimono. I think it's like a Japanese, like silk robe.
Oh, okay.
And, anyways, it caught my eye because it's like massive, and she had it framed on the wall behind glass and everything. So I asked her about it. And she was able to dive into this whole story about her dad that lived in Japan for years. And but she
find ways to spark conversation.
Yeah, she loved talking about
personal conversation too. That's great that it related to a family member when you asked, you know, because you're getting on like that personal level with them. Yeah. And that kind of goes along with another one of mine, and that is, I mean, for sure, always do your walkthrough. I mean, regardless what type of home it is. And be thorough too, like, because they're watching you, and it's good that you want them to know that you're asking the right questions, right? That you're being detailed about the property, because they're kind of assessing you, especially in the first handful of moments. And I would also encourage people to ask questions about them, you know, kids, occupation. I know it's easy to kind of skip over that sometimes, like if you're just kind of focused on the house itself, but learn about them. I mean, that's so valuable to have that information. And again, it's just overall rapport building. So
there's a term that Ninja Selling uses a lot called ask Ford questions. And it's ask family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. And you really get to know the person. And like I said earlier, relationship building is key to real estate. And that's the thing that when you leave that meeting, that's what they're going to remember. They're not going to remember, you know, you might leave them with an amazing listing package, but what they're really going to take away is whether or not you developed some sort of a deeper relationship with them.
People never forget the way you make them feel.
Exactly.
I've heard that many times, and it stands true. Another concept, and I learned this from a convention, a Century 21 convention in Vegas earlier this year, and I thought it was gold, and I kind of always try to do this, but I love to work in language like, when we list your house, do this. Before we go live, do this. So if you have the opportunity to sprinkle some of those, you know, phrases, I think it really does help. And one in particular that, again, I learned at this convention was, hey, do you have all the manuals and information on your home for all of your appliances and you know, things of that nature. And they go, yeah, okay, here's what I want you to do. When we get a showing or when we get showings, can you just put that on the counter? You know what that does? That gives the buyer the opinion that you've maintained your house really, really well, that you've taken excellent care of it. Mm-hmm. And again, you're just emphasizing when we get showings, right? And when this house sells, when we get this house sold, where are you going? Just throwing in those we's and throwing in those phrases stating that, oh, we are getting showings. We are getting offers. This is getting sold. I think that's a really kind of a psychological, I don't know what you call it, but psychological something.
It makes them feel like that you are their person, that we are going to get this done. Mm-hmm. And the more that you repeat, the more that you repeat certain things, the more the ideas get lodged in someone's mind.
Yeah.
So, and real quick, tagging off one thing you said that I think is really important. You said, when we get this sold, where are you going to go? I think it's really important to talk with your clients about their next steps because even like I had a listing appointment this week that we talked. He told me before I even showed up, he told me, hey, I want to list my house. I want to get out of Idaho. I don't know why he'd want to get out of Idaho because I love Idaho, but I want to get out of Idaho. I'm ready to list my house, ready to get this thing sold. And so we went through a whole tour of his house. We talked about price, and then I brought up, all right, what are you going to do after we sell this place? And he was kind of like, well, I don't really know where I'm going to go. Like, I have family in Michigan, I have family in Arizona, and I have blah, 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 and I can do this, and I have all these options, but maybe I don't want to do those options. And he was just kind of hemming and hawing about what to do next. And I just told him, I said, we don't have to list your house right now. And like, it's probably a good idea to figure out what your next steps are before we list your house.
Yeah, especially
and even though I didn't walk away with a signed listing agreement, and I, maybe in the future I'll sell his house, but for me, I feel better knowing that he's probably going to be in a better position not selling his place right now because he has no idea what he's going to do next.
Yeah. So. The last thing you want to do is get stuck in a rental in Idaho for another year.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. Sells his house and then, now I'm just in the same place in a rental. Yeah. And his goal wasn't achieved. Yeah. I feel like that's doing right by your client, not pushing for the listing, but making sure that they have a game plan in place.
Yeah.
For sure. What else do you do in
do you want to kind of get into a little bit more of the details? Something like listing package and...
Yeah, definitely. I'm just going to throw one more thing, a couple more things.
Okay.
I jotted down some notes here I wanted to share, but I don't know about you, and a lot of people will tell you don't worry about it. Do you take off your shoes every time?
I always ask.
Okay.
Every time. I used to not. When I first started, I don't think I asked. But every time I come into someone's home, I always ask. And even if they say, no, don't worry about it, I always say, ask again. Oh, are you sure? Because, it's not a problem. Mm-hmm. And usually if someone says, no, don't worry about it, then, even if I ask again, they'll say, no, don't worry about it. But I've had one instance where I said, oh, are you sure? It's easy to do. And she went, actually... that would be great.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah, give them that second opportunity. The last thing you want to do is offend somebody for not taking your shoes off the second you walk in the door. And what I do is I just start taking them off. I don't even care if I'm wearing boots or anything. Yeah. I just start taking them off, and normally they'll go, no, you don't have to do that. I go, it's okay, they're already halfway off. And I'll just walk around in socks or whatever, which is
that's good. Especially if it's winter out. And there's that's not even a
if
question
it's wet
at
out,
that point.
Yeah. The other thing I would say, just all around, and there's actually, I would say, don't be desperate. I was at a listing appointment the other day, and she's not ready to list for a few months. We're gonna go live like the first of the year most likely, but I have a pet peeve with saying, "Hey, I really hope to earn your business," or anything like that. I think the second you say that kind of thing, you're putting them above you in a sense, and you're telling them they have all these other options, right? Whereas if you just go in there and you do a really great job, I just leave that off the table. I don't think it does you any good. I think if anything, it hurts. And at this listing appointment the other day, I was putting my shoes back on, getting ready to walk out the door. And I said, "I really hope I get to work with you in the future." Something along those lines. I kind of cringed. In that moment, I'm like, "Marcus, why did you say that? Don't say that." I don't know if it's just me in a pet peeve, but do you do you ever think about that stuff, or is it just me?
I personally believe that, like I said earlier, real estate is a total relationship game. When you're in a relationship with someone, you don't use sales tactics on them.
Mm-hmm.
Like I heard this term once. It's a Ryan Serhant term. He says, people hate getting sold, but they love shopping with friends. Right?
It's pretty golden.
And so, yeah, I hate to use. I think it's all about the soft close, the comfortable close.
Yep. And it's easier that way.
Yeah, it is easier.
I don't want to be someone to put pressure on somebody, and then you're feeling more pressure, and it's just not a good look. So, yeah. But getting into the actual items that we bring to a listing appointment, I think, and this is something I learned from Ninja Selling. Again, if you guys haven't read that book, you should read it. It's awesome. Sometimes you have a one-part listing appointment, and sometimes you need a two-part listing appointment. Like, let's say you go into this house, and there's no records of what this house even is. Maybe it's never been listed on the market before, and maybe, I don't know, the seller built it himself and there wasn't much records to go off of. I don't know, whatever the case may be. Sometimes there's not a whole lot of information, so you kind of need to go walk through it, and you're not prepared to deliver, or speak about list prices and what have you. So I think, first of all, you got to determine whether this is a one part or a two part. And I think if you can, you need to try to make it a one part. Not only for, your time and being efficient, but just go in there prepared. You want to go in, if you have the information available, go in prepared, ready to deliver what you need to deliver and get the signature or seal the deal or whatever you want to say. But sometimes there are those times where you need to go look at that property, go back, do some research, and come back. So I think that's kind of the first step. But what do you got in your...
No, that's really good. Yeah, I mean, kind of going back to fundamentals a little bit, I try not to bring up contracts until I am like 95 to 100% sure that they're ready to sign a contract. And I will say that probably 75% of the time they're not.
I would agree with that. I definitely won't push them,
yeah. The only time that they're ready is when it's like, I am selling this house. We have been thinking about selling this house for. I have already talked to you on the phone multiple times. Like, that's kind of the times that we sign right away. We've already talked on the phone a few times about, or we've already met in person and talked about selling their house. But I'd say about 75% of the time, people aren't ready to sign a contract right away.
Yeah.
And some of that is, I believe that it's a one part listing appointment, and it turns into a 2-part listing appointment just because I don't want to push. I don't like pushing people.
Yeah, that's not your style. I don't think that's my style either.
Yeah.
And it's worked out pretty good, I feel like. And also, people will start, I mean, if they're ready to list, a lot of the time they'll be like, "No, we want to get this thing going right away." They'll start saying stuff like that. "Well, honey, we ready to sign this thing or what?" And you don't even have to ask. It's like, "Oh, okay, that must have went good." So, also, another little ninja move, not to keep throwing ninja selling all over the place, but one thing that I thought is just kind of a boss move get your listing package ready and mail it to them in like a big 8x11, 8x11.
Like Manila.
Yeah, Manila mailer.
Yeah.
Just throw all your listing stuff in there. I'm talking, and we'll get into it, graphs. You can maybe hold off. I don't know if you'd hold off on the CMA or just do pull comps but not include a price, like an introduction on yourself, your seller's guide if you have like a personalized seller's guide you've put together, and mail it ahead of time and follow up with them the day of and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Sellers, I mailed you this information. I want to make sure that you received it. Oh, did you have a chance to review it? And they'll probably say, oh yeah, we flipped through some of it, or no, we hadn't. But I just feel like that is something that is going to set you apart from the pack. I mean, they're gonna be like, holy smokes, this person is on it.
Yeah.
And no one else is going to do that. You already know no one else is going to do that.
I really like that. That's a good one.
Yep. Isn't it kind of a boss move?
Yeah, it is.
I know. I haven't done it. I'm like, I really need to do this on the next one. I keep forgetting. Or I'm rushing to set up the appointment, so I don't do it. But
yeah.
All right, so tell me what's in your listing package.
So the two most important things that I think should make up every listing package or be in every listing package. First of all, comps. I think comps are really important. Not only do they help you, of course, determine a price, but 90% of listing appointments that I go to, people want to see the comps. People care about what's selling around them. And it also helps you, negotiate price with them a little bit. Because here's your house. I mean, if this is like, you can show them this is where your house is at, and you can show them that the house, a block away in the same neighborhood, this is where it's at, and it's the same square footage, same beds and bath, that kind of deal. And originally you thought your house was worth $500,000, but this house down the street is selling at $450,000. Then it automatically is like, whoa, okay, like our competition is $50,000 lower, and I know that house is the same thing as my house. So it kind of helps negotiate price a little bit with them if you can show them up front.
Yep.
This is what's selling around you.
I always say that solds are proof and actives are competition. So they're both important, right? There's a good chance that a lot of these actives, at least in our market, a lot of the active listings are overpriced. So it's like, and we're also a non-disclosure state. So, the average homeowner can't go look at sold comps online. So they're getting their opinion of where their house should be priced based on actives. And you and I both know that those could be off by upwards of 20%.
Yeah, it's really important to show them days on market.
Yep.
Like I said, one of the listing appointments I had this last week, I was showing him his comparables, and we had basically the exact same house in the same neighborhood, and it was priced, higher than the recommendation I would have given to him. And I said, look, this is where this is priced, but it's been on the market for over 80 days. And I asked him, I said, we can price where this is priced at, but do you want to wait 80 days for your house to sell?
Sure.
No. The answer is most often no.
And a lot of times you got to pay attention to the original list price and then the list price it was at when it sold too. Because, sometimes if you don't look at that, a property, how do I word this? A property had to be reduced before it sold, right? So it could be, on the market 200 days, right? And then 10 days after they reduce the price, boom, there's the contract. Again, proof that it had to be at that price to sell, right?
Yep. Yeah. The second thing that I believe is important, maybe not as important, but is to show your marketing, what you do, especially if you know that they are interviewing other agents, because the other agents will also have the comps. And so the only two ways that I believe you're going to set yourself apart is, one, your ability to build a relationship with them, and two, what you're going to do to sell their property, to market their property.
Yep. There is, I think that, and I work a lot in expireds, right? So the clientele that I personally have isn't the same clientele, that everybody has. I guess most of my listings they've tried to sell it before. So I try not to focus on their previous agent at all because I don't know how their relationship went. But one thing I do like to mention, and this goes even if they weren't an expired, it could just be someone selling their home for the first time or whatever, but is to say, listen, we're not just going to put this on the MLS and hope a buyer falls in our lap. This is what we're going to do. And I feel like that's a really great segue into your marketing plan. And if you have all that documented, right, and that's something that they could, you can go over quickly or, let them peruse through on their own time, they're going to sit there and think about their previous experiences listing homes and be like, I feel like in the past it kind of was just thrown up on the MLS and we were just kind of waiting. But then you come in with this game plan where it's like, no, we're going to be proactive. We're going to go find those buyers. So, but I like your too. I think what you said about, building a relationship and how you're going to sell their home, those are both super important.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you bring or?
That's pretty much it. I change around my listing package a lot. There have been times that I have brought nothing except for comps, and that's it. There have been times that I've brought comps, marketing, a seller's guide, the process, what the process looks like, what I do, my communication that I have with them. I've brought all of it. I think what it comes down to is you need to tailor your listing appointments to the seller. When you go, first of all, do you know the person or not? If you have a relationship with them, maybe what's important to them and what's not. If they're a total details person, they're going to want to see every single thing that you're going to do for them. They're going to read your entire seller's guide.
A high C on the disc assessment.
Yes, a high C. Yeah. If you know that that's what they're like, bring the entire package. If they just want to sell their house and that they don't really care, just bring what's important. Just bring maybe the comps and good energy. Yep. Also, if you don't really know what kind of person they're like, when you go to a listing appointment for a manufactured home, you might tailor things a little bit differently to, let's say, a listing appointment at a $5 million house.
Oh, yeah.
Because the people that have the money, they're going to expect a little bit more. And you don't want to treat anybody else, you don't want to treat people differently, but you have to tailor your business to them. So
I actually ask. So I'm a little bit of a data person. I'm not like, the high C or whatever. But I like to have proof of my suggestions to back up what I'm telling these sellers, right? So I always bring the data, and I bring a lot. But I always ask them, are you a data person? And if they go, oh, Marcus, I was an accountant for 30 years. I'm like, okay, let's talk numbers then. But if they're like, not really, well, I'll just skim through it. Because a lot of it is important. And if they're not educated, then you're, especially if they want to list their house high, you're going to be struggling. So one thing that I bring in, and obviously I bring the CMA, I bring the marketing, that goes over photography and the weekly tasks, the property assessment, the monthly tasks, etc. if it were to go that long. But another thing I bring market stats from our MLS. And it kind of gets nitty gritty, and that's why I ask people up front. But One thing that I think is super important for people to know is how much inventory is out there, because that's obviously supply and demand. So I go through how many homes are currently for sale, how many new listings are coming out each month, how many pending listings are going every month, and how many are closing every month. And that's kind of zeroed in on their target market, like site built over 5 acres in the city of Post Falls, etc. And then I include a graph on. People are like, this is too much, Marcus. I also include a graph on months inventory, because those 4 previous things I just mentioned are all summarized by months inventory. So you're kind of like educating them, and you go, hey, like the listing point I just mentioned, they had 7.5 months of inventory. That is a lot. So it's like, if you want to sell your house, you are gonna have to be competitive, right? Because it's gonna take forever to sell your home if you're not. So I bring the data. I love breaking down. I do like an in-depth CMA that's all nice colored photos, shows photos of every house and all the details about that house, etc. But I also bring a consolidated CMA that most MLSs can probably do it. They call it like a one-line CMA, and it's just a summary of what you showed them in the 20-page thing, right? If they want to look at cool, pretty photos and stuff, they can. But if they just want to look at the summary, they have that option too, and it breaks it down by square footage, days on market, original list price, sold list price, all that stuff. And so you can really make observations and make it really clear kind of where pricing should be. So yeah, I think that's just kind of, maybe it's overboard for some people, but I figure why not include it? If they're not a numbers person, cool. But if they are, bada bing, bada boom, there it is.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. You can never bring too much. And when you go to someone's house, if it's clear that they don't want to look at papers, you don't have to show them that.
Yeah.
Right? But if they do, then you have it ready to go.
And feel free to just ask. Like, hey, I brought all this stuff. It is important for my knowledge, so I know how to, assess your property properly. But if you don't, if it's not super I'll summarize for you, right?
So I guess, do you have something else to
add? Yeah. I would say the other thing. Sorry, I'm just gonna rattle off everything.
Yeah, go ahead.
Can you picture what my listing appointment's like yet? Trying to paint a picture. No, I think the last thing that I would say is come prepared. If they have a well log and septic records and a survey and all that, get all of that and make sure they know you did your homework before you showed up. But lastly, I'm curious, when it comes to price, how do you enter that conversation on price? Is there like a certain way you go about that? Because I know I show all like the data and stuff and CMA, and then obviously it turns to, okay, what's the big question of the day? How much do you charge, and what's the price?
Yeah. I would say very similarly. I try to show them all of the data. I typically try to approach it from the bottom. I try not to overshoot, because it's screwed me up in the past. Trying to give them a number, but usually you have to understand the house a little bit, and I try to compare it to the comps in front of them. Say, hey, here's our comps, but you have a little bit of extra space, your lot is a little bit bigger, but you have old carpets, whereas these comps have new wood floors, or things like that.
Yeah.
And so I try to kind of talk them through the differences, and by the time I've come to a price, I usually have already gone through all these thoughts in my head, and so I'm just kind of trying to walk them through my process of how I got to the price. Also, depending on who they are, I will sometimes I will tell them what I believe their house is worth. Sometimes I will ask them what they think their house is worth,
based on the information you showed them, right?
But usually after I show them the comps and everything. But again, it comes down to the person and what I feel the situation calls for.
Yeah. You're right. You got to read the room, of course. And I don't know that I have this listing appointment I just went on in the back of my head, so I'm going to keep using it as an example. But she had her home listed previously for, $150,000, $200,000 too much. And I was like, okay. And she was talking about, it's not the nicest home, but we've upgraded the kitchen and we've done all these things, and it's really important I get every dollar out of this home for my next home, etc. And I knew it was going to be a little tricky because I knew she was overpriced previously by a considerable amount. I mean, I'm going to say like 15%, which is substantial. You don't want to get slapped in the face when you tell them what you think their house is worth. So I just put the CMA in front of her, pulled up my computer, so each house we looked at, I could pull up the pictures on the MLS, and I handed her a pen, and I go, do you think your house will sell for more or less than this house? And she goes, more. I go, okay, do me a favor and write an up arrow on this one. She goes, okay. Next one. How do you think this one will compare to your house? She goes, oh, I think my house is about equal. Okay, write an equal sign. So it's either up arrow and equal or a down, and they're pretty much pricing their home themselves at that point. So who knows? I haven't gotten the listing yet, but I'll let you know how it goes, if it worked or not.
All right, Marcus. So to summarize everything that we've just talked about, and please stop me if I am missing anything. First of all, bringing energy and building a relationship with your client is number one. So be interested in them, be interested in their house. That comes before you talk numbers, before you bring up anything else. Second thing is your package is important. What?
Keep going.
Your package is
Your package is important.
Bringing comps is super important, and showing how you're going to separate yourself from other realtors, what you do to actually sell their house. That's really important. The last thing is bringing more is always better than bringing less, right? If you
I agree.
Bring more data, bring more about you, about what you do, bring more about the seller's process. You don't have to use it. If you read the room, you maybe don't have to use it, but bringing more is always better.